I was supposed to say this is supposed to be a little more casual than me standing in front of you guys, but
We can do it any way you like.
yeah. Well, I don't know how much you guys know of what we do. I do these coat sleeping bags you may or may not have heard about. I'm kind of known as the crazy coat lady. All right. Like, all right, Yep. I'm kind of known as the crazy coat lady here in Detroit. What I do is I'm actually operating out of a facility down here in Corktown at the edge of 4th Street called Pony Ride. It's very close to Slows if you need a landmark. The man that started Slows Barbecue bought that building. It's 40,000 square feet for $100,000, and we help restore it from a previous abandoned state to what it is now. And currently I employ 10 previously homeless women that are all mothers and grandmothers, and we teach them how to sew these coats. So no one needs to know how to sew when I hire them, but usually by end of month 1, they're able to produce a coat in about an hour and a half. So we do a lot of programs with them as well. We do micro-lending as a big part of it because all of them, when we hire them, are in the shelter. So our big plan is to make sure that they never have to end up there again. So to get there, our main goal is just to get them financially stable. So this just happens to be the byproduct, but this is how the project started. So it's a over-the-shoulder bag, weighs about 1 pound to 1.5 pounds. Then you open it up, and this is a very large coat, mind you. It's a double extra large. And then you open it up here, and there's a sleeping bag aspect. Okay, so this one's a big one, and if anybody wants to try it on after this. And it's actually made from a mixture of recycled product from Carhartt and actually recycled car parts. We work with GM. We get their scrap from manufacturing, so the stuff that's inside the door panels is reprocessed and used as insulation here, which is pretty exciting. We've been working on it for 2 years with them, so we're actually their main source of recycling. We're doing 4,000 of these this year. The ladies as a team are going to be able to do probably 700 coats a month by the end of the year. So they're amazing ladies. But this started off as a class project. I was at CCS, going there for product design, and I definitely did not think this is where I'd end up, or this is what I'd be doing. And we started off with the first prototype I did was insanely ugly. It took 80 hours to make. I had to learn how to sew from my mother. Worst experience of mine. Don't recommend that for anybody. It took 80 hours to make the first one, and it steadily got a little shorter. The first one weighed about 20 pounds. It smelled bad and was made from 5 recyclable coats where I had to seam rip and Frankenstein's patchwork sew them back together. Trash bags, recycled billboard fabric, and orange construction fencing. It was the ugliest, smelliest, heaviest thing you can imagine, and that was the first prototype. The other 2 after that weren't that much better, but they took about 20 hours less. So this is the current model. So we've come a long way since then. And I thought I could get up here and talk while you guys eat, or you can throw questions at me while I stand up here while you guys eat. So that would be better because I can talk up here for a while. I'm very lucky to be doing this as kind of my profession now. We do speak all over the place nowadays. We have distribution throughout the U.S. because basically every time I speak, I bring about 12 coats with me and hand them out. So fire away questions, please.
Could you talk a little more about the women who sew, and say again you found them in a shelter?
So I go around to 3 of the different shelters here in Detroit. I go to COTS, Coalition on Temporary Shelter. I go to Alternatives for Girls, and I also go to Cass Community Social Services. So they all have moms shelters or women's shelters that specifically try to target, women with children. So first person I ever hired just so happened to have kids. It wasn't planned, but her drive, basically, that was shown after that, her sheer will in finding a place and being able to, she got paid $8 an hour, which initially was just funded by the PayPal button on my blog. Her first salary was completely funded by the public. And it was fantastic. But what she did with that was pretty amazing. Within the first 3 months, she found a new place to live. She was able to pay for her house. She was also able to get all of her kids enrolled in charter schools. And, you know, her youngest son, who was 6 at the time, started learning Japanese. And I think that was, for me, a big turning point on who I needed to hire. Because at the same time, I had hired a woman that didn't have any family, that didn't have any kids, and had just been released after being in prison for about 10 years. Now, she really wasn't ready for the job, and she didn't need to be ready. You know, nobody else was depending on her. But Alicia, the first person, she definitely committed to it. She's like, this isn't just about me, this is about my family. And the drive and ambition there is something that we realized needed to be replicated over and over again. And now we have 10, and now we're actually thinking about bringing in single dads as well for some of the other mechanical stuff that we have. So it's been quite a process, learning process.
Who are your primary customers for the coats? Do you sell to the shelters?
We don't sell them right now. We usually ask for a donation. They cost about, right now, $100 per coat. That includes all overhead, all the material costs, and the labor. We're actually getting to the point where we'll be able to, by the end of the year, once this new training is done, be able to produce them for $60 a coat, including all over and all that. So we're very excited about that, because what we're trying to do is ramp up to be a buy one, give one. Model similar, if you've heard of Tom's Shoes, where you can go online, buy a coat for yourself. Not this one. This is a in-process version, but our next design is really sleek. So you'll be able to buy one for yourself and therefore fund one that goes out on the streets. So you're literally paying for one to be donated. Right now it's all donation based.
How do you get your donation from the public? Is it still by PayPal, or do you have all the
We have 27,000 different ways. We will find a way. If you want to donate money, we've had people walk in. We usually get, our biggest form of it is to get a company to come in and sponsor it. I've been lucky enough to do a lot of crazy things, doing stuff with Forbes, and I was at their Forbes 400 conference, and I got to speak after Oprah and Melinda Gates. It was crazy. And that's how, 3 of the companies that were there said, well, I want to fund 300 coats, and, one was in Detroit, another was in Chicago, and another was in Atlanta. And so they just wrote a check for, one was $30,000 to get those coats to their nonprofit of choice. So that's a big way that we do it, but we also send 10, 20 coats out to different shelters completely free without a donation required, because there's so many great street outreach programs that we work with. St. Aloysius is one of them. Amazing people we've been working with for years, and we constantly slip in like 10 or 20 under the radar to them consistently. So it's a mixture of ways.
So you spoke about that. What is the structure besides the ladies?
Mm-hmm.
How is your nonprofit structured wise? I mean, what other people with such as maybe you have your fundraising unit, you can't be everything.
So it was for a while.
For a while, but if it's taking off this way, how are you? Because I see a lot of nonprofits and business, they start off, but because they don't have enough, they have capital, or they don't have enough, it peters out. So what are you doing to prevent that, to keep the growth going? And who do you have? Who is helping you to do like your outreach, your government relations, which is very important, and those aspects, especially community outreach.
So community outreach, the thing is, what we're doing is we will handle hiring of the women to bring them on board. But what we do is we farm out the distribution. We never distribute ourselves. So what we do, we have a network of hundreds of different nonprofits that we have partnered up with for that, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel or take anything away from an existing, street outreach mission, something, charitable soup kitchen, things like that. We don't want to duplicate those services. But we do have, I have an amazing board, and I do have, a director of development, a production manager that does all the training, who happens to be a single mother herself with 2 autistic teen boys, so she's fantastic. And then we do have a part-time HR director that deals in addiction services, purely because we hire a lit from all different walks of life. We have a 60-year-old woman that, you know, was in prison for 5 years to a 21-year-old that had been on the streets in prostitution. So you have all these different things that come with it, and I can't be the stopgap for that. So we have a amazing HR counselor, everything. But on the board, we have a couple people, from actually, you know, there's Tan Gilbert, there's the CEO of Carhartt, who's really helpful with as far as the production and scaling that production in a way that we can sustain ourselves. We have, as far as government services, we have a partner at Dickinson Wright that has offered to donate all of his services. I own the intellectual property for this, and we have government updates with him, so he's fantastic. Great insurance agent. Yeah, there's a list of people that it's not just me. It never has been just me, and I think that's the whole reason behind this success is, yes, I'm the one that's usually on the face of it, but there's a great amount of people that support, that are on the board, and that are deeply engaged in how this is scaling. For what I see as far as long-term sustainability and stability comes from this for-profit, buy one, give one model. But we're also launching a disaster relief arm as well, that because we own the intellectual property, we can do the licensing for large-scale production, and we're actually getting to that point where we can do it ourselves. We're going to be doing 10,000 coats next year. So Red Cross could order 20,000 in the next couple of years, and we could fill that order since we've been getting so much demand. So there's 5 or 6 different avenues we're taking it down so that the nonprofit eventually will be completely funded by our for-profit venture and won't need any capital to sustain it from donations. And that way we can continue to give out coats so that nobody will have to pay for them directly. No donations will have to come in to support them. I hope that answers some of the questions. You had a lot of them. Yes. Fire back a couple more.
I've worked on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
I've worked in government affairs, and I've worked in nonprofit world and association world.
Yeah.
So that's what when you were talking, it just sounded like a very nebulous structure. And boards are great, but they only have so much time, and it comes down. And so that's what I was trying to figure out how you were sustaining. Because to me, it would sound like you were in. I'm like,
no. I'm
just there. Other than, I mean, that's you know, in regards to what's so important is making people feel a part. Any campaign, which is what you're doing, is a campaign. Any campaign is like making people feel invested, no matter the community and all that. So that's what I wasn't getting. I wasn't visualizing that that type of like outreach, like up in Oakland County and all that stuff. So
yeah, we partner with a lot of people because we can't reach out that way. And right now we're growing so that other people can fold into it. But we're not doing a bunch of technically community outreach in that way. We just want to partner with as many nonprofits as possible, so that's kind of our arm of outreach. Because at this point, our direct mission is to really scale just here in Detroit as far as the production facility goes. So we're, as a nonprofit, we're really atypical because very few nonprofits are manufacturing facilities. And we realize that now, but we're growing into being that for-profit completely, and then being able to fund everything we do as a nonprofit.
then I'm just curious, have you gone up to China? Because I'm up that way, so I see a lot of homeless people around.
We usually just, what we do is based on requests. We get requests from, we have at least one street outreach mission in every state at this point, but that's in major cities. But we only do it, if you come or email to us about codes, then we can get them too. But since we have such high demand, you have to request it from us. We only have a limited number we're producing this year, which is 4,000, which is good for us. But when we constantly get orders, so once we fill that up that year, we push it on to the next year. But we get so much demand at this point, we have to limit it to those who actually know about us and that reach out to us right now. We do not have the capacity to handle going out and requesting people ordering these because we get so much online already. It's intense.